Happy Friday, everyone. I'm here with my friend Denise Johnson, and today we are going to talk about psychological safety in the workplace. If you've read the description, you know that we're going to discuss creating a personally psychologically safe environment, how to recognize disruptive signals, how to lead with heart. And leadership does not mean just by title. I just want to put that out there. And then we want to talk about handling difficult circumstances. So, before we get into all this goodness that we're going to be discussing about psychological safety today, I want to give space for my friend Denise to tell you who she is.
That's so gracious of you. Thank you, Javon. I'm Denise Johnson. I'm an ICF certified executive coach, leadership and team development consultant, and also a speaker. You can learn more about me on growpeopleForImpact.com. What about you, Javon?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Denise. I am also an ICF certified coach. I specialize in empathy and emotionally intelligent leadership to create empathetic cultures. So it ties right into what we're talking about today. I'm also a speaker, author, and consultant with doing the same. So I'm very excited about this topic. And it's on a Friday. We switched it up on y'all. We're just testing out to see what works. So let us know what date, time works best for you in the comments as you watch this live or view the replays. But without further ado, we are going to get into this. And I think, what do you think? Start with a definition, Denise? Is that
I
fine?
think starting, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we just have to be foundational. And I think most times we have to be foundational. We have to start there. So, Javon, would you like to jump in with the definition?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Thank you.
we're going to give the book definition of psychological safety for you. So
Yes.
it's a shared belief held by members of a team that the team is safe for interpersonal risk taking. I like that. It means that individuals feel comfortable expressing their thoughts, ideas, concerns, and mistakes without fear of being embarrassed, rejected, or punished. And we aren't seeing that right now, right? We are not seeing that right now. So let's talk about why that even matters, right? Why will leaders care about creating psychological safe environments? Why do organizations care? Why do companies care? And as always, we're going to tie it to the bottom line here. So
Yeah.
I'll let you go. Why is psychological safety important?
You know what? As I think about that, I think it's important for us to zoom out a little bit. And even before we think about why psychological safety is important, let's just think about why safety is important. If we think about when we're learning any new thing, maybe the we can think about when we were learning to drive a car. Safety was the first thing that you started with. So everybody's heard safety first, and that's something that we can just recite from memory. And I think that it's really important to think about psychological safety counts in that realm too, as safety first, because we've got to keep safety in the forefront of our minds. Because if we don't, there's some consequences that might happen that we don't want to happen. So tell me your thoughts about that. Psychological safety first.
Yeah, I love that, and it's a familiar thing, but somehow, some way that we forget about the psychological aspect. We focus on the physical because it's here, it's tangible, right? We can touch it,
Right.
and I always like to say like the scars and things we don't see. Those are the hardest to heal and hardest to protect. So,
I
when we
agree.
think about
I agree.
psychological safety and how and why it's important, right? It's a way for us to be more innovative. It helps induce learning, a learning environment, because no question is a bad question. No saying is a bad saying, right? You can make a statement and not feel like you're going to be scrutinized or, you know, disconnected from the culture just because you made one comment.
Yeah.
Comment respectfully, and we're going to get to that. Just to put that out there. Um,
We are.
we also have this thing of engagement that we've talked about. There's been an underlying theme for really all of our conversations, Denise. In employee engagement, we did some research because we like to bring numbers to y'all, and we realized that higher engagement actually equates to 23% more profitability than low engagement teams. And it also helps your turnover rate. A lot of organizations are struggling with employee turnover. 18 to 43% higher turnover in lower engaged teams. 18 to 40%.
Mm.
That's insane. But I think we need to drive it home with an example. So, so the example,
Okay.
about a $20 million company, right? And they have high psychological safety. 20% of that revenue is $5 million. That's how much more they would make on average if they have higher psychological safety. If you take that same company and give them a low psychologically safe environment, they will lose at least $5 million due to employee turnover, and it can go about 9 million. And that's not even equating all the other things that are impacted. So that's about a $20 million swing that we're talking about. If you want to talk about the numbers, Denise.
So let's double click on that. So you gave some cost around doing and not engaging and not engaging in psychological safety. So what is the cost of engaging in psychological safety? So how would we even, how would we begin to quantify that, to put that into the equation?
Yeah, I mean, quantifying psychological safety, we mentioned some of the things that it helps, but one is the number that we just mentioned, engagement,
Right.
right? If you look at your bottom line and you say, okay, our products, our projects, our innovation is all up, right? What's the underlying theme of that? Well, we give people the ability to share their ideas, to brainstorm, to get in teams, to lead projects, to be engaged, to have meaningful work, right? Those things are all tangible, and you can measure those a number of different ways, right? We know about the surveys, and I'm talking about outside of
Okay.
these surveys. So you can
Yeah.
measure psychological safety and know if it's a psychologically safe environment through your feedback, right? If you ask employees how do they feel supported and valued on your one-on-ones or those team conversations, they'll tell you
Mm-hmm.
if you have a psychological safe environment. If you look at turnover,
Right. Right.
why are
Yeah.
people leaving your organization? Are they leaving for better opportunities because you've allowed them to grow and flourish in your organization? Or are they staying for 3 months and getting the heck out of there because after the onboarding, their psychological safety plummeted? You know, you don't support them. You don't have mentorship programs. You don't allow them to do job rotation. You don't have benefits that really align with their values, right? There's so many things that we can look at to say, am I creating a psychologically safe environment? And when you take that down to the individual and say, as a leader or as an employee, right? How am I having conversations on a daily basis? Am I working to build and cultivate meaningful relationships? Am I listening when someone wants to speak with me? Am I taking feedback and am I internalizing it, or am I actually implementing what is being said? Am I finding the jewels, as I like to say? And if
Yeah.
you look at those and you tie it down to your bottom line, then you will see um, the mistakes. You will look at employee engagement scores. You will look at retention. You will look at employee happiness, employee satisfaction. You will look at client engagement. Are you retaining clients? Right? Because if
Mm-hmm.
an employee is
Mm-hmm.
happy and they're customer facing, they're going to do what it takes because they feel that sense of ownership and joy. So your clients will stay, and it's a trickle down effect. Every
I
phase of the employee and customer journey.
I get that, and Javon, I'm sorry to jump in on you, but I'm picking up pieces that you're putting out there. And here's a couple of things that I hear to kind of link back psychological safety and financial gains. First, just to acknowledge, and you called out, hey, we're going to put some numbers to this. I want to
Mhm.
call out that we want to put numbers to this because I think that, well, I know that this term has a reputation for being in that ultra soft category. It's soft, and the soft things are not the easy things. The soft things are the difficult things. So we're putting numbers to that to move it out of ultra soft and highlight it and bring it up. And another thing that I'm underlying here in what you're sharing is you gave some examples of, hey, this is what people can do in order to start promoting this kind of environment. I heard listening, I heard engaging people in teams, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit.
Mhm.
But here's the thing, I don't see a cost. I don't see a cost attached with those things, right? Those are change of behaviors.
Yes.
So the 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 part that I'm serving up in my comments is that isn't it amazing that we can do something that can add significant value, significant increase to our bottom line through engaging people differently, engaging people wholly and effectively, and the costs are almost minimal, but the
Minimum.
upsides are huge.
What a fantastic point, Denise. I mean, if you think about this, and this is why organizations are struggling right now, because they always think about money, right? The bottom line. And they end up trying to toss money at things, right? And they're like, oh, this is a problem, whether to say, what's the solution? And the solution is in your people, right? And even if you think about the
I was going to
triangle.
ask you that when you said that, because you said organizations are always talking about money. I'm thinking, Javon, what should they be focusing on? And you just
Absolutely.
answered it. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
absolutely. The people are the key. I mean, when you think about people, processes, technology, people always comes first, right? Because the processes and technology don't matter if you don't have the people. So, and that's what's happening to these companies. And what I see when it comes to psychological safety is they don't ask before they take an action, right? They sit and they silo and they make these decisions in their leadership boardrooms and they say, hey, here's what we need to do. Right? We're going to ask these people. We're not going to talk about what else can happen. We're not going to consult the people that are on the ground on a daily basis. We're not going to talk to the middle managers and see what support they need. Or, we don't, they don't, for some reason, a lot of organizations, they just disconnect the human aspect of all of this. And that's where we're seeing a lot of trouble. And then also, a lot of people aren't, you learn these technical skills, but you forget about the foundational skills like conversations. And we hear things
Mm-hmm.
that disrupt the psychological safety, like that's just the way I am, or that's how they are, or no offense, but right. We have all these sayings that
Right.
I don't mean anything by this. And it's really exacerbating the issue that we're seeing because lack of communication, lack of empathy and emotional intelligence. You have high dollars, so you want to throw money at the problem, which makes it worse because then you get disconnected from the people because they're like, oh, they only see me as a number. They think that they can buy me out, or they think that that's all I care about. They don't know me that I value more about. I valued my coworker to my left and right. So when you get rid of them for no apparent reason, right, it makes me feel like I have lower psychological safety because I'm thinking about when
Mm-hmm.
I'm next, right? It is just this cycle of this over and over and over and over again. And transparency goes a long way in improving psychological safety. If you have the conversations and as leaders, you know what's coming in your organization, typically you have some lead time, right? So if you let them know,
Yeah.
like, hey, it's a difficult time, difficult season for us, unfortunately, we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. And we're going to have to reduce employees, reduce staff, and have those conversations because you'd be surprised. I was at an organization, I'm not going to name it because I didn't get permission, but I was at an organization a while back and they ran into a difficult time. And they did that. They had a
Hard.
town hall meeting and they said, "Hey, we're running at a difficult time. The industry has changed, and we're going to have to reduce staff. Before we do that, before we go and make these cuts and make those calls and send these emails to people, we're going to ask who would voluntarily, right, want another chance. We can invest in your business if you had the idea to start a business, right? We'll give you that.
Mm-hmm.
We can give you money to cover you until you're ready for retirement because you're close to that time. There's so many different ways that we can benefit, and it could be a win-win. But it's just knee-jerk reactions, right? So we have to think a little deeper about the person and the people to really solve this issue that we're seeing.
So I hear you in that the essence of safety first, creating more psychological safety, is being focused on the core piece, and that's the people in the framework. Absolutely. I want to go back to something that you said, just maybe comments that people may have heard to kind of excuse the lack of psychological safety. I think you mentioned, oh, what's a classic one? No offense, but, or I
Yes.
didn't, I don't mean, yeah, I don't mean to upset you, but, or I didn't realize that you were so sensitive. Um, so I just really want to underscore that, because when we're leaning into creating environments where people can show up being humans, being fragile and vulnerable, mistake prone, we're letting potential offensive statements go, and we're leaning into more of what people need to
Absolutely.
thrive in organizations. I love the example that you gave about that company, and even when times got hard, they leaned into, hey, what can we do for you? And I can only imagine that there was a long track record of investing in psychological safety in their organization before they even got to the point where they were brave enough to have those kind of conversations and be that transparent as an organization. That's fantastic.
Absolutely. I mean, and it starts with getting the right people in place initially, right? If you have those leaders
Yeah.
that think with that mind, and that could be an interview question, like how would you handle that situation for that leader? Because you have to be forward thinking. It's business. You're going to run into some very difficult decisions, and I feel like
Yeah.
that has to be one of them that is challenging the thinking of that leader, because you're not just dealing with staff and numbers. You're dealing with livelihoods, and the decision you make as a leader in these situations that impact psychological safety, they are have a
Mm.
domino impact, right? They're not just impacting that person, but they impact their family. They might impact who they're caring for. They may impact their relationships as a whole, because now they're stressed and they're not going to be that same person that you're used to seeing. There's so many things that we need to think about when it comes to psychological safety and creating these environments.
So I hear you saying that as we increase, I want to get your thought about this, and then I want to up the ante
Sure.
on something that you're sharing. So I hear that psychological safety helps the world become a better place. You talked about the ripple effects of
Yes.
it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, wholeheartedly. I mean, if you think about it, right? And we most of us have been in these situations where if you have an environment where you feel comfortable, you feel more joy doing the work, you feel like you're valued, you feel like you're heard, seeing all those things that we hear. You have that environment, and you get off of work and you go home, right? You're like, okay, hey, if you have a family or you have friends, like you're a little more upright, you're a little more chipper, dare I say it, right? Then if you have this horrible boss, you have this horrible micromanager over you, who's really just driving you insane, and you find that even subconsciously you carry that weight, right? There's a big difference in that same person, but the circumstances are
Mm,
different. And I know we talk about, how we can perceive, we have the power perception, and how we react versus respond, and all these
yep.
things, but we're humans. Right? So
Yep.
if we as leaders or in organizations can help make that person feel better in whatever way that is, why not do it? And like we mentioned earlier, it is little to no cost to making your
Mm.
environments better.
So I absolutely agree. Here's my up the ante on it, on all of this, and kind of psychological safety and what feeds into it. We've been talking about, empathy and vulnerability and leadership for a number of years. Empathy, vulnerability, compassion.
Mhm.
So I'm going to bring the L word into the conversation. I believe that in order for leaders to lift up the psychological safety of their teams, of their culture, it is absolutely necessary to lead with loving hearts. Now, for some, that may have moved past the ultra squishy category, off the charts and off the table somewhere.
Yeah, they're
But
like, wait,
before
what? I was
Yeah,
with you before you said that.
I was with you until you said the L word. I get it. But I'll just distill it a little bit. Before you let it drop off the table, what I'm sharing is thinking about other people and thinking with other people from a space of concern, kindness, generosity, grace is all the L word.
Absolutely.
So I don't want that to let us scare us off. But if that's our focus and we, as leaders, and we fall a little short of that, we're all still in a great place. Tell me what your
I,
thoughts are.
I love that. Right. I wholeheartedly agree. And love, I don't know why that's seen as like such a squishy thing, right? Because love is a verb, right? And the things that you just mentioned are actions. You have to show
Yes.
genuine care and concern. You have to show empathy and compassion. There's things that you do, right, in exchange or in action and representation of that love. So I appreciate what you said, and
Oh, thank
it
you.
makes me also think of the word trust, right? How
Mm,
psychological safety equates to trust,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Trust is a big deal. I see trust as being pretty foundational to any relationship, even if the relationship is really kind of transactional. Trust
Yes,
is at the core of that. So, I like that you brought up that word, because if people want to reframe how they're thinking about psychological safety, one way you can do that is lean into creating more trust and
yes,
think about relationships, not even professional relationships, if you'd like, but relationships in your life. And as trust has shifted in that relationship, as it has grown, think about the benefits and how that relationship has grown, how sustainable, how much more sustainable it becomes, and the benefits that it produces for the people involved. I think that that's really exponential.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, if we go back to the definition of psychological safety, we said to express their thoughts, ideas, concerns, and mistakes without fear of being embarrassed, rejected, or punished. That equates to trust, right? I have to feel that you will not judge me. I have to feel that you will not scrutinize me and marginalize me and demean me, right? When I say what is on my mind and my heart, and I have to feel that and trust that if I do open up a little bit, that you will at least be welcoming, at least find ways to look for understanding versus just accepting or being tolerant of me. You will
Or
look
tolerant, correct.
and that's deep.
Absolutely.
It's a very deep thing, and
Absolutely.
trust has been eroded. And that's why so many people would rather work 70, 80 hours on their own thing right now than they would being in the corporations, because they're like, hey, I've been laid off twice. I've gone through all these
Mm.
things. Companies are not telling the truth. Companies are not representing my values. All these things. So it's just like I'd rather step out and trust that I can do what I need to do as an entrepreneur, as a consultant, as a freelancer, whatever it is. We're seeing
Mhm.
that happen more
Mhm.
and more these days. So organizations,
Mhm.
leaders, if you want that talent to come back in house, you got to build the trust back, right? You got to create better psychologically safe environments, and it's not about what you say; it's about what you're doing.
I was with a group of new leaders earlier today, and one of the new leaders, just it was just spot on, called out what you mentioned just a moment ago, that leadership is about showing what you believe in and doing that consistently. And the other thing that she mentioned was, and being patient with other people,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes longer. It may take longer for some people to come along than others, but realizing that we've got different time frames, we've all had different experiences. Another point that we had talked about was the folks on your team, they may or may not be engaged in their roles. maybe
Absolutely.
they're engaged in their roles, but they're a recovering disengaged person. That's fluid. We shift during our roles and during our careers, but being open and patient around that.
Yeah.
I think, and I'll offer this, and I'm wondering, what you think about it. But I think that very often, when we talk about psychological safety, people feel sort of like guarded up. This is what I need to do to protect mine, and that may be important. Uh, but I believe that the best way to have a culture that's growing in psychological safety is for the folks in the culture to be actively contributing to that, doing some of the things that you mentioned. Man, if we get focused on doing those things, then magically, and it's not magic, we've got an amazing supportive culture.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree. And you mentioned this. This is a great point that you just made about instead of focusing on guarding ourselves and being defensive, what if we opened and made room for serendipity, right? What if we allowed ourselves
Oh,
to be free? And it's challenging, right? It's a challenging thing, but that's something I've learned over the years, and it's allowed me to do things like this with wonderful people like you, right? Where I can have
thank
these
you.
conversations and meet people like yourself who I wouldn't have met otherwise. If I was still the same closed and guarded Javon that I was in my younger days because I feared being let go of or disappointed or denigrated or treated like another
Mhm.
statistic, right? Then I would not be here right now. So I wholeheartedly
Mm.
agree with that. But to allow others to do those things, there has to be a level of respect, right? And when you respect, you will not be the person saying no offense, bud, or I don't mean anything by this. That's just the way I am. They are. No, you will be having open conversations, conversations of curiosity, coaching conversations, quite frankly, because we don't know everything. And that's not just the way you are. There's always room for change. You can teach an old dog new tricks, all the little things that we have. Okay. So, but it all starts with openness.
Yeah. And what are a couple of ways, going back to what that new leader said, it's about showing people and doing that consistently rather. What are a couple of ways that leaders can demonstrate openness?
Start with a simple conversation, right? Not even a conversation about work. Right? Like one of the best things that I learned in the military was having one-on-one conversations with my people. And I'm not going to call them subordinates or anything. They were my people, right? And I
Yeah.
served them as their leader because I found out everything I needed to know about that person when it comes to what motivated them, what drove them to be in that moment, what kept them waking up every day, how did they
Mm.
respond when they were having a bad day, when things weren't going. Were they willing? Did they
Mm.
feel comfortable enough to talk to me about difficult conversations or needing support? What were some of their experiences in the past that caused them to have pause when I asked them to do something, or maybe they didn't feel like they were, proficient enough to do something. I wanted to know all of that stuff, so I knew, and I would always end with, "How can I best support you?" Right? And that was
Mm.
always my question because what it did was it showed them that I was there for them and that they didn't have to worry about all those things that went on in their minds with me. And I was creating that environment where they could grow and be better. I mean, my second deployment, that I quite frankly, like if I left it up to the leaders that assigned my personnel to me, they were a band of misfits, right? They were looked at as failed PT tests, people with horrible attitudes, not ready for promotion, all these different things. But when I got them, when I worked with them and they came and was on my team, they were the best performing team I've ever had.
Mm.
They were because
Mm.
they knew that they were protected. They knew that they had psychological safety. They knew I respected them and they would respect me. And we showed it by doing whatever we needed to do as a team together. So I feel like
I
organizations
yeah.
need to get into that a bit.
I really appreciate you sharing that example. What I hear is the redemption that can come about when we invest in people. And over time, because I'm thinking that, you set up those one-on-ones and you dug in with questions, but it was probably over a course of time, I would
Absolutely.
guess. Yes,
Absolutely.
that it took to really build that relationship. But
And might I
that's
add, I'm
redeeming.
sorry, Denise, I was just going to
No,
say, might I
please.
add, it wasn't me just firing questions to them. I allowed them to ask me things and talk to me, right? So it wasn't just an interrogation.
Yes.
It was more of a conversation where I just genuinely wanted to know.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. So I wonder if we can talk about some things that people can do. So we've got openness, but we actually have some resources that we can share. Before we do that, is there anything else that we should put out there that just kind of not easy, but very doable things that leaders can start doing in their organizations?
Well, floor for and can kind of go off
Okay.
that if that's okay.
Okay, absolutely. So, and I'm just looking here at my notes because there's just a couple of pieces, but I want to be sure to call out the resources correctly. So, if you're wondering about, okay, so we've had a great conversation. What can I do? And this is exactly how we like to flow into this, because if there's not an action, we've just had a conversation. But if there's an action, we can have change. So, a couple of suggestions: start the conversation around psychological safety with your team. You can share this resource on LinkedIn Live. You can share the start off with just the definition. Another example, another suggestion is Amy Edmondson a few years back, Fearless Organizations, a few years old, but just exceptional. She talks about psychological safety and business benefits around it in some detail. That might be a place to start. That Fearless Organization actually has a free, and back to the no cost piece again, a free assessment on psychological safety. So you can send a link to your teams and, hey, let's take this and let's have a discussion and set up some actions based on what we've learned in the assessment. So the assessment is just a piece, and the assessment will lead us to committing to action. And then
Absolutely.
the final thing that I want to call out there is Tim Clark. I want to call out his work around psychological safety. And you can find that if you search Tim Clark psychological safety. He's got a 4-stage. Actually, it's a 5-stage. It's a 5-stage framework around what the stages are of psychological safety and how we can help move our teams, our leadership, and our teams through those stages and the benefits of doing that. So Tim Clark is another resource. So there are great places to start. Actually, it's a 4-stage of psychological safety by Tim Clark would be a great way to search for it. There's resources there. There's resources that don't require any or very little investment other than your time and willingness. Yeah,
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing those,
you're
Denise.
welcome.
And thank you to everyone who has been here, very engaged. I love this conversation. We could talk about
It's
this
awesome.
all day, but we know it's Friday and we know y'all
It
might
is.
have some plans. So we are going to conclude. But before we do, Denise, I'd like to allow you to share how people can connect with you.
Absolutely. Either on LinkedIn at Denise Johnson or my website, growpeopleforimpact.com. And please feel free to reach out, set up time with me through there. I'd love that.
Awesome. Awesome. And I'm going to
Javon,
type
what
it
about
in.
you?
Yeah, let me type yours in real quick so that people can have it. So I'm gonna do this real quick
You
live.
know what? We've got friends who have done that for us.
Oh,
Thank you
really?
in the chat. Appreciate
Oh,
y'all.
okay. Hey, love it. All right,
Yeah.
perfect. So thank y'all. Man, see, that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm talking about. Love. When you talking about love, I love y'all. Um, but
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can reach me, javonwooden.com, and if you want to download my guide up for empathy, it's a free ebook. Once you go to my site, you'll see the pop up. Go ahead and get that and share it with your friends. Right, I'm not stingy with the resources, but yeah, I would love to have a conversation with you. Make sure you connect with me on LinkedIn if you are not connected already. Let's talk. I am big. People probably see me like, who is this guy reaching out to me? But I am big on reaching out and having conversations because I am not a transactional person at all. I am all about relationships and building rapport. So that's it.
Javon,
That's me.
Javon, what are we going to talk about next? Because we've got some time coming up
Absolutely.
in a few weeks. Yes, and
Yes.
I believe it's going to be mentorship. Is that
Mentorship.
right?
Yes. I am
Yeah.
very excited. So mentorship is one of those topics that really gets glossed over. But we're going to talk about
Javon, but we want to leave a teaser. Okay, go ahead, serve it up.
yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of people don't really talk about, right? The importance of mentorship.
Yes.
So we want to bring the conversation to the forefront and definitely sign up because I'm about to post it early next week. So y'all have time to sign up. All right. But make sure you share it as well. We're looking to expand the reach of these conversations and get more people involved. So if you'd like to be a part of this conversation, please let us know as well. We'll bring you up here. We're not ashamed, right? We'll bring you up. You can
Yeah.
talk with us. So yeah. So that's. Do you want to add anything to that, Denise?
No, I'm all set. Look forward to seeing everybody in a few weeks. And thank you for the comments. I've been speaking and looking through that. Thank you for the comments and love. And everybody enjoy the Olympics this evening and have peace and progress over your weekend.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Denise, for all your love and energy.
Thank
And
you.
we'll see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.